It is 7:02 on May 8th, and I call this meeting to order. Thank you. We'll go ahead and start with attendance. Ryan.
Here.
Kathy. Here. Martin.
Here.
Simon.
Here.
And Bess is also here. Approval of minutes from the April 10th meeting. God, that felt like forever ago.
Vote to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any comments from the public? All right, we'll keep on moving. We are going to move right into the discussion of our ward residency requirement for appointment and quorum requirement. I need my laptop for this one. Sorry, guys.
I made sure to bring my laptop specifically for this one as well.
I'm on a limited battery life, so I left my charger in the car. Sorry. All right, Simon, you want to read us into this one?
I will say, I did do some research into this and took down some notes that I wanted to talk about, but I wasn't sure who, is the reason that it is on the agenda, and I didn't want to, cut in front of anybody or anything.
I was asked to place it on the agenda by Councilmember Bailey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, Councilmember Bailey.
I'll take a stab. I think it
Great.
has to do
Go
with
for it.
trying to find somebody.
Yeah.
To fill the, to appoint.
Oh, he suggested it because he is one of the council members needing to make an appointment.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So it
Right.
is twofold. One, before he was appointed to a council position, he heard of our struggle last summer when we couldn't make quorum at endless meetings.
Yeah.
As I came home in about 5 minutes from several meetings where I would show up to and say, oh, we didn't meet quorum, canceled meeting, several times. And this was before the three of you newer folks were here.
Yeah.
Ryan, were you on?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were on. So you remember some of these meetings. And I think you're part of the reason we stopped having to do this. So we would have, I think we had to cancel maybe 3 or 4 months out of 5 or 6 because we just couldn't meet quorum. We didn't have enough we didn't have enough committee members in order to meet our quorum, which was 5 out of 9. So we wrestled with a couple different ideas. And one of the ideas was people in attendance or of the appointed members, how many did we have to have? Right now we have quorum set at 51%. When you continually have positions not filled and people consistently missing, which we do have a rule for in our bylaws, it makes it very difficult to conduct meetings and move forward with our plans. This is why we've been stuck in our city ordinances for over a year. With that, in one meeting, we talked about having quorum be a percentage of members in attendance, which met the need of not having people appointed. It has not gone anywhere to have that bylaw updated because it has been sitting with legal since last summer, and it hasn't moved anywhere. I think I brought it back up in January and over the winter at some point. Still hasn't gone anywhere.
Correct.
And now we have 7 members, so we can have 2 people absent and still meet quorum. Right now, tonight, we have 5 members here. We're scraping by quorum. However, if one person from this 5 were absent, we could not hold a voting meeting. I think last minute we could scrap it and call it a work session.
Yeah.
And then we could discuss, we could work, but we couldn't vote on anything.
Right. Right, if there was formal action to take, it couldn't be taken.
Right. So that makes this a challenging problem. Councilman Bailey wanted to bring this up because one, he's struggling to find someone to appoint for Ward 2, and he, through like long conversations and like thinking about what is the most just way to hold quorum, and thinking through the problem of, well, if you don't have anyone to appoint from your ward because no one has said they want to be a part of it, and you don't want to force someone to be a part of an important committee like this, what do you do? Having a quorum of, well, we have 3 people present, does 2 out of 7 members on a committee make sense? And no, it doesn't. But how else do you solve the problem? Well, his idea is, can you appoint from outside of your ward? And that is his question idea, something he wants to propose. Do you have any questions based on that background?
I will say I guess the first question that I came up with, I did a lot of reading about this just to make sure that I understood it, and I still might be missing something regarding quorum. So when you look for any mention of what constitutes quorum for us, in our bylaws, it's Article 8, Section 4. It's got a quote in it. And it says 51% of members of the committee in attendance will constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote. That doesn't seem to have any language around 51% of the seats. Like, it just says 51% of the members of the committee.
Those are the adopted bylaws by the committee, November 9th of 2023. However, it was never codified into code. The city code, I included that. It's right after the memo that comes with this. Section 2.50.140, about halfway through the paragraph, 5 members of the committee must be present to constitute a quorum. So our city code says it, and until that's codified, the bylaws,
Okay. I mean,
they don't supersede. So that's where it's coming from. Like I said, the EIC adopted the bylaws, but it never, and I don't mean this towards the committee, but it never made its way to council,
right.
To get codified.
Well, and okay, so that's understandable, but we're kind of already halfway there then, because this is the language we need for it, right? To be able to submit, like, this is how we would like to have our quorum codified in the city code. Like, we already have the language we need to submit to them, so.
Right. The question would be, is that the language you want to remain with? It's also, in discussions, it was also mentioned to me, maybe it's not less than 4. I mean, that way if there's 2 vacancies, it at least gives you that one, but if it's 3, then it's 3 people of a 9-member committee able to take formal action and determine what direction the committee's going. I mean, those are the things to think. The representation. So that's why it says 5. Because then it's a majority of the represented seats on the committee. But understanding it's hard to fill. It was recommended. So maybe it's not less than 4, or something like that.
I understand that. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, because it seems like obviously a situation like that would be a very, edge case type of scenario, but it also seems like an issue that would kill a committee. Like, if we've only got 5 members total, and we only have 3 people in attendance, and we can't have meetings because of that, that committee doesn't seem like it will last long from there. But if you guys disagree,
That's
fire
how
away.
we existed for about 6 months.
Yeah, work sessions.
Work sessions.
Yeah.
Okay, so just still
So
continuing
we
to have
have
meetings
lived
as work
this.
sessions.
This
Correct.
is our lived
Just-
experience as a committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you think, then what's your take on the idea of explicitly calling it less than 4, or is the
Well-
concern that I brought up a concern to you, who is actually been
done
on the
it.
committee during that.
It was pretty not fun, and we have been thrown under the bus, so to speak. I mean, the language in a letter from different groups in the community has said because they could not meet quorum, it led to inaction. You've read that letter with me. That feels terrible.
I think, I think Councilmember Bailey's question about membership, you know, if
Kind of.
if they could be appointed outside the ward,
Yes.
might help with also keeping members on. I think that was the thought behind that, is to keep it going, and then maybe quorum isn't as much of a problem.
Yeah. So I think like mitigating factor one is having it 51% of appointed members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not less than three, or like not less than four still really stinks when your membership potential is 9.
Right.
And that is a sign that, one, I think it could be a sign. I don't want to say it is, but it could be a sign that, one, we don't have the support we need from our governing body, and two, I question if we are actually supporting the needs of our community. I'm likely to say yes, we still are. But when you are supporting the needs of a community that is chronically underserved and not used to representation, well, how do you go out there and help support that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a crappy answer when it's like you keep doing what you're doing, but you can't really do a good job of it when people still don't want to identify themselves as people there to help or
Right.
be there. So I think the first step is, one, having it be 50% of the committee, and then two, considering what kind of parameters we want to put on looking outside your ward.
On that one, and I do think, yeah, we deciding, no less than 4 or 3, like I said, I don't like explicit numbers, I like doing the percent, like you're saying, but before that decision is made, like just reaching outside of the ward, I actually put together what I think could be a good suggestion for how that's handled, and I wanted to throw it out there and see what everyone thought. The language of it is a little terse, so that when they actually adopt it into bylaws, they can copy and paste as much of it as they need to. But what I have for suggestion for alterations is when a ward seat becomes available, it's only available to residents of that ward for 3 months. It's only available to residents of that ward for 3 months. If the seat isn't filled by a resident of the ward in which it belongs, it becomes available in an at-large capacity to an out-of-ward applicant. It's still to be appointed by the council member who would normally make that appointment. Any resident appointed to a seat in this fashion has a term of 1 year instead of the standard 2-year term. At the end of that term, any in-ward applicant that has come forward would receive priority in being considered for the seat. Number 2, absent of any in-ward applicant, the incumbent out-of-ward appointee may request reappointment for another 1-year term, and it would waive that 3-month grace period. Third thing, absent of any in-ward applicant, if the incumbent out-of-ward appointee does not seek or is not granted reappointment, the open seat process begins again with the 3-month grace period limiting applicants to residents of that seat's ward. So we allow outside of the ward, at large, if nobody fills the opening within 3 months. After that 3 months, we open it up to anybody. If they get appointed, if they're appointed as an out-of-ward appointee, they have a 1-year term. It's not meant to be a lot of hard red tape, but you send an email to your council member, hey, has anybody within the ward applied for appointment? No, cool, I'd like reappointment. That's it. And that continues on the 1-year term until it becomes open again, and then we at least have a 3-month grace period where we look for someone within the ward before we open it up to at-large.
I like the time requirements on there. I think that makes a lot of sense. That way we're still making a really concerted effort to make sure we're representing each ward and not just ending up with a lot of people from the same ward, or just trying to make sure we're representing the whole area.
Yeah, that's kind of what the reason for that constraint.
I don't like the 3 months because if you have 3 months, then you could possibly go 4 or 5 months without somebody being appointed. So I think we need to shorten that grace period up. Because I really think that you've lived it. And you know, if we give people 3 months and we don't have somebody appointed, then it's going to be another month before, you know, you truly get somebody started. I think a month. I mean, yeah, we have plenty of ways to you know, make it open, people to know that there's an opening. Our city council members would be, you know, have to be like looking for that person. But I don't want to go 3 months.
Initially, for the initial 3 months from January to March, I'm actually okay with that 3 months. It's the intermediate 3 months, the second year of the term.
You're talking about like once the seat becomes open again, restarting the process with 3 months.
Yeah.
Switching that.
Yeah. And I think what I would rather see is when someone applies for that position within the ward, we look at availability. Because the likelihood of someone being available to take over the position mid-year is 50-50, depending on the ward. Because that's how we were started. We're staggered.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone has a, you know, depending on the year, it's a 50-50 chance if you can be in one ward or another. So I think there's good chance that the person who stepped in could actually just be appointed.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So there may be a seat for them, or there may be the at-large seat appointment available. And just because you're on the committee doesn't mean you can't apply. Like, you can't apply for the at-large position and say, like, when this is available, I'd love to do it if my ward seat's not available. We just haven't had a ton of people and a ton of interest in the committee. So it's never been, like, super contentious. Am I incorrect in that?
As someone who's been through looking for people, I can tell you that I think that 3 months is excessive. For one, council members are responsible, and they would start looking for at least a month before the term expires, at least, maybe more. So that given a 1 month would mean grace period after that before it goes to citywide, would mean you'd have at least 2 or 3 months of looking for someone to fill. Because that could start, I started 2 months before looking for people, before the term expired. And it was really difficult to get any interest developing. So I would think 3 months would be too long. The rest of it sounds pretty good, frankly. And just a little bit of history, if it helps. This structure is unusual in that it's a committee appointed mostly by the council members. And there's historical reasons for that. At the time it was put forward, the then mayor was not ecstatic about it. And it was felt that even if it became passed by the council, he would be reluctant to actually fill the jobs. So it was then put out so that each council member got to make a nomination. So given that, it's important that it still reside within the wards initially. And given that you can start looking for a replacement a couple of months before the term expires, and then give an extra month, that's 3 months. And if you can't find anybody in 3 months, then it should be, I think, opened up citywide at that point.
There's also no application period. They're constant. Like, if you decided you wanted to be on the committee now, like, this is a push for everyone watching at home and anyone in the audience. For all of you out there, the camera does not pan out there. No one knows how many people are watching today. People are watching from the sidewalk. Hello out there. You could apply tomorrow, and we would hold on to that application until, one, you were selected, or two, someone withdrew it. Like, there's no reason to go searching. If you are interested and you live in any of the wards, whether it is a position that is filled or not, we can hold on pieces of paper. There's like an online application. Maybe does it sit somewhere? Yeah, it like sits somewhere on the internet. So it's like out there. Like this exists.
We had a couple months ago, didn't we have another Ward 1 applicant? I thought I remembered someone saying that because we were asking about new updates for membership. Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm with that, like, it does take a while, and a lot of people take encouragement to apply before they actually apply. I went to a women's leaders conference once, and women tend to need to be asked multiple times before they'll go out and apply for something, especially in a place of leadership. That being said, I've been reached out to. I think when I was first in Ward 2, Lisa reached out to me a couple months ahead of time and said, "You still switching over?" When like I just knew I was moving. It's not a seat of the pants decision. So I think while I am fine with 3 months, I think if that's too much time, a month.
I will say, when I put all that together, like, the structure is what it is, and what I thought was kind of best for us. What the numbers were, I'm not like, I wasn't ready to die on that hill or anything. If we think 1 month makes a lot more sense, I am very down with that. If we think changing the whole, shortening the term makes sense, I am down with that. I will say it's nice to hear the perspective of like council members who have spent time looking and actually do look before the appointments even open, things like that. One other thing I was going to say, though, is with this potentially being our new bylaws for it or whatever, how many open seats do we have right now? 2? But we already have the at-large seat filled? Or is it 2 ward seats?
Martin is the at-large seat.
Okay, so we have a Ward 3 and a Ward...
No, Ward 2 and a Ward 4.
Ward 2 and 4.
Yeah. You and Kathy are Ward 3. And then Ryan and Jennifer are Ward 1.
That's right.
But then Anitra, and then Tom's are the empty.
So they are both...
Or Anitra's Ward 4. Sorry, the other opening is Ward 4. But as I understand it, at the next council meeting, May 20th, we'll at least have the Ward 4 appointment.
Okay. So the openings that we have now, though, none of them are the at-large. They would be warded seats.
Correct.
So this being our bylaws, whatever the numbers shake out, great. But for these specific ones, if they've been open for a while, you just make those at-large now, right? Like, make those available for at-large. Like, not start a grace period as of the city council agrees that we're going to start having a grace period. Like, for this one specific opening, it becomes at-large immediately.
Once it's codified by code.
Yes.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, that's what my suggestion was, like, not start the 1 month grace period once we codify this for that one opening. Make that one opening ready to go now.
Well, maybe it's within 1 month of vacancy, whenever that vacancy,
Ooh,
whether it's
yeah, that's a good
January
point.
1st or just if it happens in April, then you know.
Yeah, that's great.
In this, in Daniel's case, he knew it was coming and said, "Hey, my last meeting's going to be," so that gave the council member time to start searching before that vacancy occurred.
Now that he has dramatically made his appearance, does anyone have any questions for Councilman Bailey?
I have a question for not specifically Councilman Bailey, but Councilman Saper also and Bailey, anybody. First of all, I want to acknowledge how much effort that put into you guys. We're really thinking about this one. It shows a lot of effort being put into it. But my question is, what does the searching process looks like from a council member's perspective? In other words, you mentioned 2 months or something like that. Walk us through something like, how does that look? How do you go and try to find somebody within the ward?
Several ways. I mean, I would ask people if they knew of anyone starting out who might have an interest. Go talk to them. There are members of the business council who do live in North Kansas City, and at those meetings, I would make presentations and ask if they would like an individual who does live in North Kansas City would like to be part of it. A couple of times I found interest, but found out that they weren't in Ward 1. So I was stymied at that point, so I had to find others. And it became a very arduous process, including a lot of beating the bushes, frankly.
The reason
Talking
that,
to people.
yes, sir. The reason I ask is because there may be another way. There may be a way that we could get what we want, and just using another method. For example, what is an incentive to be on the committee? Maybe if we make the incentive known in the community, maybe the competition between people in the community will actually drive it and bring them to here. You don't even have to search for them. They'll come here maybe, just an idea. As I said, the great ideas already came about, but there may be another way. If we could showcase a real reasoning to get involved, then maybe there's a little bit of competition then between the people, between our citizens in the community to actually come to us. Maybe just another way. I think we could come up with a way to do that. Other than, I think representation is one of the largest factors that we're after. Make sure everybody's represented in each ward. And maybe, as I said, just maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another focus that we could put on it. Just saying.
I have a quick question. I noticed that our new mayor had recently published a long list of committees that need members.
Yes.
So, it sounds like this is probably an ongoing issue and not just for IEC.
Correct.
So, speaking to what you were talking about, doing something different, what if we have like a fair? So you can go and you can see, and we bring the delicious cookies that I always come for.
Like a job fair.
But then you could talk to somebody on the committee, or you
Committee
could,
fair.
get an idea of what they really want to do or what they're looking for. And they could see, I know Parks and Recs has an opening, I think the library board has openings, I think there's lots of different. So we need to figure out how to get people to come to something like that and sign up there, so it's not as scary as Anthony knocking on your door.
So you're saying don't tie it in with our bounce and balance budget thing? But yeah, I like that.
We could do something fun. It could be like a street party.
That's a great idea.
But I just think people, it's like your idea. We keep doing the same thing, and we're not getting members, so we need to do something different.
Yeah, try to work on some community outreach efforts that all.
And as a matter of fact, the block parties that we have, that would be we can get out there and try to recruit. But as I said,
Councilmember Bailey, turn on your mic, please. Oh, is it not on? Oh.
Is this better? Yeah, too much. So we don't have an instruction booklet of how to go hunt for this. Each person does it in their own way. First, we probably tap our own networks. guess what? You know, a good chunk of you are on my network. So that one's kind of out. One of the reasons, one of the options I'm going down is I'm going to the high school. They have their own internal EIC committee, but now I'm hunting a high school student who is of the requisite capacity, and hunting one of those in a single ward is a challenging thing, which is one of the reasons I was interested in looking at expanding, because I think that would bring a perspective that is not currently on the committee, is someone of that age. Similarly, one of the things that I'll probably be pursuing if I continue to, one, I've also solicited both at meetings and anywhere I go looking for applicants. The mayor receives applicants, they go directly to him. I believe you can mark for the EIC, but that doesn't automatically go to the council members, as we have this is our only appointing spot. So I'm hoping that maybe there's some in the system that I'm not aware of, but to my knowledge, there may only be one, as he's received quite a few applications. And lastly, I'll tell you, just in brainstorming here recently, I think the other possibility is I might go look and talk to some of our seniors. They're a demographic that is not owner, of our homes. They would bring a difference based on age that, just like our high school student or a very young person, is different than our own. To your point about like a fair, I think the answer for that may be in hitting up where we have a concentration of those people who are active and interested in the city, which is our Citizens Academy. Has EIC went and talked to that group at all?
No, I don't think. No.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Marcia,
idea.
go ahead and share the knowledge. We'll go ahead and mark that off the task list. Thank you so much. It's your own fault.
I think that's a great idea about the academy. That would be, I know, I think a couple of people in here, including myself, went through it, and that would be a great start, because already seems like the citizens that are part of the academy are interested in maybe stepping forward and so forth. So I think that would be a perfect idea.
I do like, the efforts you're making. I know that it's you're getting thrown into the deep end to go and find somebody. So I don't think that any of us are up here going, get us our appointee. Dang it. But I did have a question with what you said. Is there like a age requirement? Do you have to be 18 to serve on a committee? Okay.
No. So it's on. So it's recorded.
Good. So yeah, I do like that, looking into places. Yeah, like one point that you brought up with the, looking towards some of the more senior residents is that they're not like homeowners. And I was thinking one thing is like doing those events and reaching out to the right types of groups. Like, I don't know how many people on our committee are renters in Northtown. Like, is that number 0? Jennifer rents? Okay, so we do have some renter representation. But yeah, looking for those like places where we would like to see representation and try to actually find them from those specific sources, I think would be great as well. So yeah, I think the seniors and the high school are both a great place to look, and the Citizens Academy. But I still think we should do the at-large thing for now.
So we do have quorum here tonight, which is kind of hilarious. We already have in the language from 11/23. Is that what you said date-wise?
Yeah, November 9, 23. Article 5.
that it's 51% of appointed committee
No, membership. You're talking about the membership part?
for quorum.
Or quorum. Oh, that's,
You said it was in
that?
our bylaws, but our bylaws have not yet been approved, which. I'm
Yeah,
not-
it's
Well, by
Article
you-
8, Section 4 of our bylaws have
Yeah.
the language that we would ideally, sounds like, want to propose to get codified.
And can you remind me what that is?
The language
Yep.
specifically? Okay, so Article 8, Section 4 states 51% of members of the committee in attendance will constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote.
Is that what we want? So that means we could have 3 people here out of an appointment of 9, potentially. And that could, and two make a quorum.
Well, okay, so you mean 3 people, we have 3 people total on the committee. 2 of them are in attendance, it makes a quorum. You're
Read
talking about
Article,
that scenario.
sorry, read Article 8, Section 4 again.
51% of the members of the committee in attendance will constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote.
Okay. And if we get the bylaws approved, well, that still does not supersede what you read to us before.
Correct. It would then need to go to city council in ordinance form to amend the current city code.
And the city code would be the 5.
Then that's, well, no. If, there'd be a
The city
recommendation.
code is the
for-
current language of no less than 5.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we would be changing.
And then we would change it to 51% of
Members of the committee in attendance.
members of which we want to keep or we want to change.
That's kind of the question at this point, because we're about to make a proposal. So like Mike was describing, a scenario is there are 9 seats available, only 3 of them are filled. If 2 people show up, that's quorum.
Correct.
That would work under this language. Do we want that to work?
Right.
Also, in that case, if all 9 seats are filled, but only 3 show up, it's in attendance, so that means that 2 people could, vote for something and take formal action for the whole committee. That's where I was kind of getting at, no matter how many seats are full.
Okay, so this language is not clear enough if that's what we want.
Right.
Of saying
So-
we want over 50% of current appointed seats, not total seats, but it needs to be more clear language than this.
Correct. And that is what I'm asking. Is what we want in Article 8, Section 4, is that the language we want?
It sounds like no. That's what I've been reading, and it doesn't seem like it's clear because there's already been confusion about it here tonight.
3 times. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, if we want to change the language, we will need a motion from someone in the committee
To change the language of the bylaw?
to change the language of the bylaw before we send it to council.
I move to change the language of the bylaw before we pass it on to city council.
I second that.
To what?
Oh, well, then we need to decide what that language is right now before we have the motion.
Okay. So what I think we want is that we want to change it from members in attendance to 51% of appointed committee members.
And that includes everything that's, all the seats that's filled. Vacant seats, that doesn't even bring that into account, right?
Correct, because those would be unappointed seats. So right now, we would need 51% of appointed seats. We currently have 7 appointed seats, so we would need 4 out of 7 to meet quorum. Correct? Easy enough math for me
Correct.
tonight? Yeah. I appreciate that you're typing that as you go. My brain needs that.
Okay, so I don't think that this is going to be it first pass, but changing as of what you said, this is what I have. 51% of appointed member seats in attendance will constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote. I'm going to repeat it one more time.
Yep, thank you.
51% of appointed member seats in attendance will constitute a quorum to transact any business that requires a vote.
I think that's right. That's correct language.
What do you guys?
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking, and I might advise that you come up with the recommendations, and get them to council, because Tom, through ordinance and all that, can also word it, same intent, but there might be some,
Great.
Yeah, so we can,
wordsmith it, and then amend your bylaws after everything has been put into code.
okay, so we
That
can
way, in
make a
case
motion to submit what we come up with
Mhm.
and have the understanding that Tom could amend it to make it more like legally clear, but still maintain the spirit of what we're asking for.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this one first, and then we'll do, on a different motion, we'll do the outside the ward.
Yes.
I feel like that's just gonna be clearer.
Yes.
Great. So I need a motion to amend the language for Article 8, Section 4.
I make a motion to amend the language for Article 8, Section 4,
To,
to, as described by council member, by committee member, I'm saying.
I need a second.
We got it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
So Mike, I need to send this to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's do the
Shoot it.
second, both of them together in an email.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, do we have the language codified for voting or appointing members outside of an individual's ward?
Okay, so yeah, on that as well, I was reading a lot about it. There is no requirement for anything like that in our bylaws specifically.
It's-
Where that is actually written is in the handbook for boards and commissions, and I didn't record that down. And that
That's
is like just
fine.
wide of all boards and commissions.
I believe it's actually in city code.
Oh, it might also be in city code. I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, it's in city code, and I don't know that actual language because I'm not that good yet.
It, if I may,
Please.
it's, the committee shall consist of 9 members. Each council member shall appoint 1 qualified resident from such council member's ward. The
Okay.
portion that deals with that, but that's from city code.
Do you know what code it is?
Yep. It is 2.50.130, membership,
2.50 point.
130.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you read that again?
Yeah.
Please, sorry.
The committee shall consist of 9 members. Each council member shall appoint 1 qualified resident from such council member's ward.
But we have 2 people appointed from each ward, is that correct? Am I not?
Right, each council member from the ward gets to appoint 1 person.
So who appoints the second person?
The other council member. There's 2 council members.
Oh,
from
gosh,
each ward.
okay. I'm sorry, I'm like really confused over here.
And then, of course, the mayor appoints a qualified city resident that is at large. That's the 9th member.
So are we looking to change that tonight or make a recommendation?
We'll make a language recommendation.
So in the city code, is that city code specific to us?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to say, it sounds like the exact same thing that's in the handbook for boards and commissions, which is like in our section. Like we have our own section in that handbook. So yeah, it sounds like it's just copy and paste the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
but this-
our committee was brought in by city code. I believe Mr. Saper was, or Councilmember Saper was critical in getting that written. So proposal on language to amend city code on this one. And then we'll go from your initial draft and we'll edit based on what we've decided on.
Okay.
Could you read what you've got?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the alterations are, when a ward seat becomes available, it is available only to residents of that ward for, I'm just going to change it right now, 1 month. If the seat isn't filled by a resident of that ward, filled by a resident of the ward to which it belongs, it becomes available in an at-large capacity to out-of-state applicants, in parentheses, still to be appointed by the council member who normally handles this appointment. Any resident appointed to a seat in this fashion has a term of 1 year instead of the standard 2-year term. At the end of that term, any in-ward applicants that have come forward would receive priority in being considered for the seat. Absent of any in-ward applicants, the incumbent out-of-ward appointee may request reappointment for another 1-year term, the 1-month grace period being waived. Absent of any in-ward applicants, if the incumbent out-of-ward appointee does not seek or is not granted reappointment, the open seat process begins again with the 1-month grace period limiting applicants to residents of that seat's ward. I know, it's very terse.
I want to throw something out there. We already have problems getting people to fill these positions. So maybe instead of doing a 1-year term, we do it as a 2-year term, because otherwise we're adding to our churn. That's the word I want to use. Because you're only on there for a year instead of 2 years.
So the only reason I don't have that concern is because of generally the process of retaining your seat. You contact your council person, you say, I still am interested in retaining my seat, that kind of thing. Like, I don't know how many times you've gone through that process, but is it a relatively straightforward thing?
Every time I have not reached out, they have reached out to me and said, you still want this? And I say, yep. And they say, fill out the application. And I say, dope. Or Megan says, Bess, fill this out if you want your seat still. And I say, I'll try to remember. And then she enables me. She's really good at it.
Okay, so.
It's very simple.
I don't want this to sound like an indictment of any of our current council members or anything. I love them all. They're all lovely. But I will say, if that's the case, also the added benefit of having it at a 1-year term would encourage council members to stay on seeking people in their wards. If they have to reach out to this applicant once a year instead of once every 2 years, this would encourage them to continue to try to find somebody in the ward. Because at the end of the day, everything that we're changing, the top priority is still to have representation equally from every ward, right? Like, that's still #1 priority. Okay, I just want to make sure that that I'm at least on the same page with the general consensus.
I am, sorry, I hate to be this person, but you might have they're 2-year terms, and they all end basically the end of the year, calendar year, or January 1st or 2nd, but they're all kind of calendar aligned.
That could mess up the staggering.
Right. If somebody is, say their term is going to end, I don't know, this December, and I'm on the committee and I leave and they come in, all of a sudden they're a year. Mm-hmm. So it's simple. It's just finding the way to word. I think that's why the previous code, or the current code says a vacancy shall be filled for the unexpired portion of the member's term as soon as practical. But there's a way to do it for just a year because I'm trying to think who Katie Stokes, the old Ward 4 council that was elected a year ago, left. So Yvonne is just filling a 1-year term. So there's a way to word it. I just don't have it right now.
Yeah.
To keep your intent, but also not cross over that. Yeah.
I think it's just to finish out the appointment.
Yeah. And I will say to what Kathy is saying, again, I'm not hard on the hill for any of the numbers. So I'm not definitely saying it's got to be 1 year. I just think that there are benefits to having it be 1 year.
I think there's 2 pieces to it. I think it's one, to finish out the appointment to keep the every other cycle. Because that is important because you don't want all of your turnover to end up on the same year.
Right.
while many of us continue to stay on the council for multiple years, because it's a wonderful place to be, you still don't want it to end up being everyone leaves on 1 year. I think that's critical. I also think if there is a reasonable and excellent, 'cause I don't know why I started with reasonable. If there is a person from the ward that wants to be in that position, there should be no reason that person can't step in midterm. If someone moves into the area or moves wards and they want to fill in for, they want to be in that ward's position, but it is filled by another person, I think that person who is now living in the ward that there is an at-large spot for should be able to take the seat.
So you're suggesting treating the out-of-ward appointee as an interim? Because that's actually, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Treating him as like a steward of the seat until.
An in-ward person could be found.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that's what we were, you don't like that?
It creates an issue in which that person is of limited investment in the committee because they're just sort of filling a seat without any sense of permanence or relative permanence.
I don't think so.
Yeah, a month or two later, they could be replaced.
Yeah, but a month or two later, they could move out of North Kansas City,
Well, true enough.
right? We can't predict enough into the future to have it stable, but I also don't want to prevent someone who's living, who doesn't know that they're going to move to North Kansas City to not be allowed their spot when they're in the proper ward, that opportunity, and have to wait 2 years.
Or in the case of proposal, it'd only be probably less than 1 year.
Yeah. I just think that if someone from the ward shows up and wants to be a part of it, they should be considered.
And then you would just kick that person who evidenced an interest and maybe has been an active participant, just sort of kick them off at that point?
I mean, I don't think we're going to give them the boot.
After 1 or 2 months, maybe?
I'd like to point out here that ultimately it is still the councilman's appointee's power. They ultimately get to do that because let's say I have somebody from Ward 4 filling the Ward 2 seat, and all of a sudden I have someone raise their hand in Ward 2 who, for whatever reason, I believe is not a good fit, even though they desire to be on the committee. I still have the ability to say no based on whatever that reason is. You are not a good fit.
Yeah, very much so. And I was going to say, if we do try to do the whole interim route, two important considerations to have is one, that it's still a normal application process. They still have to apply and get, deemed worthy of the appointment or however you want to put it by the council member. And the second important consideration is what we are talking about right now, them operating in an interim status. We need to figure out what happens to them when they would be leaving that interim position. Like Anthony said, it needs to be more ceremonious than kicking them out. Seeing what they want, holding their application on file for when their seat becomes available, for when an at-large becomes available, whatever. And then also, the understanding needs to be very clear to people when they are being reached out for this appointment. Like, it needs to be very clear, this is an interim appointment, this is what it means if you leave, if you stay, yada, yada, yada. Like, clarity on that. If we do go the route of treating the seat as an interim appointment, there's going to be a lot more necessity for clarification on how that interim works. Which I'm not saying I'm not opposed to that, but it would be an extra need.
Wow. We already have problems keeping people on the committee, but then if you have an interim and that person is like, if we have somebody else come along, you might lose your seat. I mean, I'd be like, no thanks. Because if I'm going to invest my time, I want to have my 2 years. So I really don't think it's a great idea to boot people if somebody in the ward comes along. But I understand why, too, because, all of a sudden you could end up with, 6 people from Ward 3 because we're all active and involved. And we don't want to do that because we do want to keep it spread proportionally amongst the wards.
Yeah, I agree with Kathy. And that's part of the reason I like the 1 year term. We were talking about that too. So there is the opportunity that someone wouldn't have to wait a full 2 years if someone does move into a ward and want to join and they're in the correct ward. They wouldn't have to necessarily wait an incredibly long time then to fill their seat. But the person who was in there in the interim still had that full year to serve on the committee too.
But also, if we get people from the same wards who are active participants in our city government, there are also people who live in North Kansas City who are not like the people that live in wards 2 and 3. That represents a decent chunk of North Kansas City. But there are a lot of people who live in North Kansas City that are still not represented. And now what we're talking about is like the one case of like one person here or there. I know I started it and that's fine, but if we're not ready to approach this language and we need more time for it, then we should take more time for it.
I am definitely not opposed to taking more time for it as well. I think that this is obviously, I don't want to sound like, egotistical. I think it's a good start, right? I think I got a good start going here that I'll send to everyone. But I also kind of agree with where the conversation is going. It might be a good idea at this point to say, we'll try again next meeting and see if we can really hammer out something. But I do think that it should really be next meeting, like maybe at the latest. I assume Tom would appreciate that.
Did we submit what we already did, motion that we already made?
Yes.
Or do we want to do it all together? Do we have to? Can we already grab that forward? I mean, it's already out there.
Yeah, we already made the motion over
We
the
already
quorum
made a
language,
motion.
right? Yeah, so I'm fine with just emailing that to everyone and Mike, and that one goes.
All right.
So how do we do this? Because I am new to the committee. So now we're kind of tabling it, but how do we discuss it in the meanwhile? Or are you going to send it out to all of us so we can kind of look at it and like fiddle with it so that we don't just come to the next meeting and kind of land in the same spot?
I'm going to send an email in my current language, but yeah, Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, so what we cannot do is have a long email thread conversation about it.
Right.
That would violate our sunshine laws. So what we'll do is we can have a work session. And that would likely be on not a Thursday evening, or if we do, we'll have another work session over it between now and what month? June, but now in June, which means we will have a while because the next, and then when is June city council meeting?
Gee, I should know this.
And you'll need two city
Second.
council meetings because this is a changing of code.
June 10th. Oh,
So this wouldn't go into effect until essentially July.
So yeah, there'd be the council meeting to propose it and to recommend it to council and then bring an ordinance back, and then once the ordinance signed. So potentially the second meeting in June, if nothing is going to the council on the 20th. Although, sorry, what is today? Holy cow. So yeah, meetings on the 3rd and the 17th, and EIC wouldn't meet until the 12th of June. So, right, yeah, by the time it's recommended and then assumed approved, then brought back with an ordinance.
July,
Yeah, July
whatever.
Based on that timeline,
3rd.
do we want to take
2nd.
10 more minutes and work this one out? Okay,
Or
yes.
We're not talking, at most, we're talking about an 11-month appointment.
If we stick with the 1 year, yes.
Yeah. And that gives plenty of time for someone who's really interested to get something done and participate, to fill out the term, essentially. So it seems to me that that would be a reasonable way to do it, is just to appoint them for that remainder of that one-year term as proposed. And then at that point, it's up to the various council members to either find someone from their ward.
So then we wouldn't have it finishing out the term. We would just have them serve one calendar year
Yes.
or until the following January.
Well, to fill out the balance of that year, yeah, whatever that balance is. It could be 11 months, it could be 6 months.
Okay, then it would be a person appointing a new person for a partial term for that.
They could, for the remainder of that term, 1 year, it'd be another year.
Do you want to give a stab at that language?
Yeah. So it did seem like when we were kind of where the discussion was going, that we were landing on an either or, either having it be that 1 year term or having it be an interim basis. So I do like having it be the serve out the remainder of the year. And it kind of matches with what I was saying. Like, I think what I have is good enough to send along to be like, here, you actually turn this into actual language. Although, like, I didn't think there was anything in there that implied that it was an interim type of thing. And it seems like, that kind of maybe seemed like it was the case. But the way that it's written right now is when a ward seat becomes available, it's available only to residents of that ward for 1 month. If the seat is filled by a resident of a ward if the seat isn't filled by a resident of the ward in which it belongs, it becomes available in an at-large capacity to an out-of-ward applicant. Any resident appointed to the seat in this fashion has a term of 1 year instead of the standard 2-year term. And should we?
Sorry, just hit me. You could say, and this isn't perfect, but is available not longer than the next occurring January 1st. So no matter, something to where you don't go past that, have that chance of getting past a term.
Or balance of existing term.
Then
Something like
no
that.
greater
Or if
than
the
1
existing
year.
term is
But that could
About,
either be
you know,
one more
up to
year
1
or
year, 1 year.
2 years.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
the balance of the existing term up to
No,
1 year.
Up.
Or an explicit date might be the better way to do it.
Yeah, I think.
Not
yeah,
past the
that-
next
that's
occurring,
a-
whatever the legal,
That's cleaner.
Tom will wordsmith it, but that way, and if there's still a year left in that term, that way then whoever's appointed next or available or whatever, it's just a year. But
All
I mean,
right,
that way
I'm
it's always on that.
I am rewording. Please be patient with me.
As Mike said, Mr. Barzee will, I'm sure, interpret as he needs to make it go through legal code. So it doesn't have to be perfect.
At this point, I almost consider giving Tom headaches a personal hobby.
So then that next January, when people are appointed, they will either be appointed or they will either continue out their 2-year term or they will be starting their 2-year term. Or if they're in a weird case like this,
They would have to pause a month because it'd have to be vacant a month.
That's what I'm saying, no more than 11 months.
right, but
Yeah.
if that, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand, because I want to, because if Tom doesn't understand, that's where we'll get into trouble.
Mhm.
So anyone who is either being appointed for the first time, they're appointed for a first time, they'll have a 2-year, well, I guess they'll have a 2-year or 1-year term, depending on who they're appointed by. Anyone who wants to take over one of these spots, if they were in the first year of the term, and the council member was in the first year of the term, and they couldn't find anyone, so they had a person for 11 months out of the 2-year term. They would need to appoint someone new,
For this,
and that person would serve 1 year,
the second 1 year.
the second
Portion.
1 year.
Yeah, but because, I mean, if we say January 1, so it,
Yeah,
less
so
than a
they would
year.
either have a new person from their ward serve 1 year,
mhm,
or they would have another person from outside of the ward serve another 11 months.
Which could be the same person.
Could be the
Right,
same
yeah.
person.
right.
Or if that was their second year, or if it was their, like, back down to their year 0, they would do a 2-year term.
Yeah.
You
I
lost
could
me.
almost envision, because if they appoint someone from their ward, then it's a 2-year term.
And it's a 2-year term.
Or
and
they
it's-
finish the unexpired
1 year.
term of somebody. Well, just if say I don't know who, but if a 2-year term just started this year, and someone left,
So I just
then-
started
then
my
you'd-
2-year term.
right? And
If
if
I
you,
leave and Lindsay can't find someone to finish my term, but she
Mhm.
appoints someone for Ward 1.
mhm,
Under this, they would finish out until January,
correct,
and then whoever serves in January or February would finish out the year,
correct,
and that's it.
right,
And then it'd be a new appointment of another 2 years after that.
right. Whereas if you left and she found someone from Ward 2, they'd finish out the year in 7 months, or
Yes,
they just finish because they're in Ward 2.
correct.
Yeah.
So
That's
this
That's
will
the year
be,
part. Otherwise, it's just finish out the unexpired term, but you have a chance then of more than a year.
Yeah.
but this
yeah,
will
yeah,
be logistically more difficult to track.
Yeah.
Because we're on a 2-year,
1 year,
a
2 year.
staggered 2-year
Yes.
cycle.
Uh,
So the language needs to reflect that staggered 2-year cycle.
Yeah, and I will say, though, that's not without precedent. We do that with city council seats that, like,
Right.
sometimes they only serve a year term, sometimes they serve 2-year terms. So I think that procedurally, putting it together should largely, I think, be rinse and repeat, running the risk of oversimplifying it, but.
Honestly, I think, and I'll leave this to Tom, but I think what he can do is add another paragraph under the existing one, saying that if a member cannot be found from a council member's ward after a month or more vacancy, then, all this kicks in. Otherwise, it just goes along with what's there.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure we're really clear about it.
Yeah.
So what I updated the writing to say is, word applicants, any resident appointed to a seat in this fashion serves a term until the January following the appointment. And then the second part down here says, absent of any in-ward applicants, the incumbent out-of-ward appointee may request reappointment for another term of no longer than 1 year. Because that's the way it was originally worded, is like, as long as you are an out-of-ward appointee, like in a seat, in a ward that is not the one you live in, you are operating on 1-year terms.
That's what I did, yes. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And I think it's December 31st.
I can change that. I think that what we have now, though, is clear enough that Tom can do what he needs to do with it.
Right.
So,
All right, then I need it might be your computer's too close to your speaker, or to your microphone. And then I would bring your speaker back behind it. Or your microphone back. Yep, there you go.
swear I
All
know
right, I need a motion.
Motion to adopt this language that we have discussed and read multiple times.
Martin, it's your phone. Everyone move your phones.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion passed.
Right, so that and the, quorum, to be recommended to the council at the next meeting? I'm assuming,
Yeah, I'll be sending both of those to you.
okay.
Does someone need to be at the next meeting to present these things?
It wouldn't hurt.
Who's going? Oh,
I'm usually pretty available on Tuesdays.
who's watching Lois? I can go if someone watches Lois. Hello.
Tom, you're not doing anything that day, right? When is the meeting? Tuesday?
6 o'clock.
Well, like
The 20th.
The 20th.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good for that.
All right, moving into the discussion of Link City availability to all residents. Councilmember Bailey, you want to fill us in here? Isn't this one yours too?
No.
Oh, it
No,
wasn't?
this,
Okay, great.
this was Martin's,
Great, Martin.
Martin's request.
Over the council meeting, a recent council meeting, the Link City, or now the firm that was Link City, made an announcement or had a presentation, and some of it needs to be a little bit clarified. We have some of the, I guess, the ordinance, the documentation, but if we could discuss it to figure out exactly what's the issue is, basically. I know some of the council members were there and
This in regards to apartments?
Yes.
And not having, Link City.
exactly. What's the real issue with everybody not being? Is it capacity?
Is it, why don't they? Basically is your question. I can give a little background, and then both of us spoke with Tom Barzee today. But just as a little background, Link City, it's operated by Knox, KC Fiber. They've only operated it since 2014. The city started it. We built the network. It's a city network. And until, I think it went live or started doing business in 2005. The city operated it, as I said, until 2014. And between 2005 and 2014, we charged for service, and everybody that used it paid as if you had AT&T or Google or any of that. Knox, when well, just to put it bluntly, the city was hemorrhaging money trying to keep it going. I mean, we're not in the business of fiber networks. Knox was. But the city put out RFQs, or requests for proposals, RFPs, and Knox was one that submitted. And part of their proposal was that they could offer it to residents for free. Prior to any of that happening, city staff, including Tom Barzee, he was telling us today, went to every apartment complex there was saying, hey, how can we get this in here? The difference is, for Councilmember Saper's home, single-family home, it's one line to run in there. For the apartments, the residents don't own it. It's a commercial property. So it's up to, they have to have permission from the property owner. And at that time, I was reading a memo today from 2010. At that time, 65% of the residential units in North Kansas City were what they called MDUs, multi-dwelling units. And hardly any had said, yeah, we want to be a part of it. Time Warner, AT&T, at that time, other providers would, basically cut a deal or make a proposal to the apartment complex and say, hey, you let us come in here and do this, we'll pay you this much per unit. As a city, we can't do that. We weren't able to compete. We did negotiate with CityView when it was being built, I think around 2005. the Gallery Lofts does use Link City. So it's not that they've been denied, just the property owners have to gain access. As I understand from talking with Knockix, like Sunny Hills, they just haven't had an interest. There is a cost to installing it, and even a residential property or a single family home, if it's going to be over 500 feet, then Knockix can charge fees over that. But it isn't. When the city ran it, it was a charged service. That was just a proposal of Knockix. So I know that kind of changes it. But it wasn't set up that as no to the apartments. Originally, the apartments didn't. Yeah, the owners, not the residents, but the owners didn't want to participate in it.
If I can add to that, there, that's better. There have been multiple attempts over the years to get them to participate. They've fallen on dead ears or money grubbing ears, however you want to put it, and it hasn't gone anywhere. So that means we're left with new developments, and what we can do possibly to require that if they want benefits from the city, such as various tax incentives. And so we're left with that, but the installed base of apartments is really out of reach of the city itself, except through appealing to them, asking them to install it, and then it's up to them. So we're not denying it. It's actually the landlords who are denying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the person that knows the most about the whole thing, Tom Barzee wasn't available to be at the meeting. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have let all of them know, hey, here's. Now, I will say that after the meeting, Aaron Wendell with Knockix reached out to the mayor and said, hey, I do have a couple ideas, so we're going to meet and see what they're thinking, if there's a way. But like Councilmember Saper was saying, even a home that you own, there were homes that because the city had a contractor getting this network out, there were homes where they just put conduit. Maybe someone didn't want the fiber, but because they were going down the road, it was just economies of scale. It was better, but we still had to have a signed waiver or consent from every property owner to get on there. So it's much the same. There are some homes that don't have it because the property owner said, no, I don't want it. I have cable. That's all I'll ever need. But it's the same whether it's an apartment, business, or resident. They have to agree. Say yes, I want it. But yeah,
We've made it available, essentially, to all. But that includes the landlords, who are the intermediary between the tenant and the city in that regard.
but I'll be interested to see what Knockix has to suggest.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how that meeting goes.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a question for you, Anthony, because I also saw the city council meeting when it happened. And I did also want to say, shout out to Aaron, who works at Knockix. The whole explanation and really speaking so glowingly about the agreement with the city, at least as a resident, it makes me happy because I'm always anxious of oh, when's that 10-year grace period going to end? And it seems like they're happy with the agreement still. So, and also shout out to Jim Dunn, was the citizen who brought this up, talking about how, this service should be available for everyone, not just homeowners. And I kind of agree with that. That's kind of the question of, I won't get into the whole philosophy of it, but water, gas, electricity, their utilities now, largely in the world that we have built, broadband internet is kind of a necessity to survive and thrive in the world that we built. So you know, unfortunately, the whole world's not there, but our city's pretty dang close to that. So Anthony, what I wanted to ask you was, you had mentioned during the city council meeting that and like it was alluded to tonight, there's precedent for requiring this from an apartment developer project in order to get the financial incentives that they love. And they agreed. And you also had mentioned something at the city council meeting about potentially like codifying that being a requirement of incentives for apartments, or like when a project comes in saying, we as a city will commit to requiring this if you want your, your tax incentives and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Several years ago, the League of Women Voters, dealing with Kansas City, Missouri, the whole alphabet list of incentives that are available, created a scorecard to be used in approving or disapproving a developer's requests. And some of it had to do with affordable housing and many other issues. But using that kind of approach is a possibility, and in our case, what we're talking about now is requiring access to the city's broadband.
I think I'd like to mention here that it's not just they have to have access to internet, because they do. You are essentially forcing a landlord to use your provider of internet. Now, I think everybody will agree it's the right one, but that's what you're doing. This, people at these apartment complexes do have access to high-speed internet. It's just through a vendor that probably is not the best option for the people living there.
Right, they have the option that is economically enriching for them. Not necessarily the one that is enriching for the tenants and residents that we have of our city. Now, I will also say, though, I'm not saying that they're not allowed to get AT&T or whatever, just making it required that it's available.
Mm-hmm. In other words, requiring at least they can have as many providers as they want. But one of them, using this scorecard, they would get points if they included the city's broadband.
Yeah, and I think you would find very broad support across city council that any new development that asks for any tax incentives will have that part tied to it. But in terms of older buildings that are harder.
Who can't?
Right.
Well, and that was another thing that I was going to say. After watching the meeting, like, the city council seemed to overwhelmingly also flow in this direction. And like I said, Anthony had mentioned, like, the precedent of having these kind of things during the, figuring out what the agreement is with the city. So I think for us, it's just, if we all agree as a committee, throwing our support out there saying, A, we would like this codified sooner rather than later, and B, we're in full support of it if we are. I don't want to speak for the committee. But I think we don't have to throw out language proposals. The city council is already on that. It's just we should pressure this to actually, go through soon before the next major apartment development comes, because another one is going to be coming, always.
I might add that one apartment developer, the Bloom one that's still under construction, did agree to that.
And Gallery Loft.
And Gallery Loft.
I mentioned that.
They came in later and did it on their own.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, Tom Barzee did say, I mean, he has some research to do. It is, with, obviously, they have no choice but to use our water, our sewer, Spire Gas, they're the only gas provider, Evergy for electric. He will do some research on the fiber side of it. So we were the first to do this. I mean, build this network in a city like ours. Ultimately, it resulted in there was a lawsuit. I think it was AT&T or Time Warner.
Time Warner, at least, and I think AT&T as well.
We won, but then ultimately there was legislation at the state level that the city can't do this anymore. They lobbied. They all got together and lobbied. So he has to step cautiously on how we word things or what we can do, just so you know, but that's the intent, is to incentivize the use, barring not being able to. Yeah, because it's great. It's a very impressive what the city did decades ago to, yeah.
A little anecdotal story. I play D&D online with a lot of people all over the world, and none of them have ever heard of anything like our internet situation. When I describe it to them, they are blown away.
Tell them to move here.
I do. I'm like, I want all my friends to live right here in my awesome little city.
I think that was a lot of information to take in on city internet, which I always love to tell AT&T about, not being able to beat my internet prices. It's my favorite thing to do in Target. This felt like an info session rather than any sort of action to come out of it, other than to express our love for the internet of our city, and to support what City Council is doing with their support of Link City as well. Are there any action items we need to carry out from this portion of our conversation, Martin? Okay.
Does EIC view this as an EIC issue?
Inclusion and equity into the community, just the discussion about what actually happened, you know, how it actually was set up, the contract between the city and Bird. I think that was the main reason for bringing up this.
I think in a post-COVID world, which I say more often than I ever thought I would, access to internet and stable internet is a necessity. And I don't think there's many people who will question that anymore, but it is not something that is codified anywhere as a necessity. But when you look at AMI days for schools, alternate modes of instruction, kids who missed AMI days missed over a week of education this year, closer to 2 weeks, because they didn't have access to internet. And that was incredibly disruptive to their school years. Individuals who have work from home days or who have opportunities to work from home who do not have access to stable internet are missing out on weeks of work because of weather, because of sick children, because of other life circumstances that happen. And I think as we continue to consider what it means to live in a city that has incredible internet and what that means for us to be a proof point in using internet as a major tool of communication and a way to welcome people into our town and provide them with up-to-date information, I think this is one of the ways we can incorporate more information and more help, but also as a way of bridging gaps that we don't typically consider vital to people's daily lives.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think, like, in that vein, it is very much, I consider it an EIC issue. Like, in addition to the necessity of having the internet, like, a big consideration that I've had since I came onto the committee is thinking about being equitable and inclusive for everyone, which I feel like often, like Jim Dunn had said, overlooks people who are not homeowners. It overlooks renters and tenants, and I've thought a lot about wanting to think about ways that we can support those kind of people in our city going forward, and I think that this is a perfect starting example, so I do think it's very much an EIC issue.
All right, for those who were able to make it to our work session this week, tell me about the language updates.
I ended up having to go into work, and I talked to Martin about it, and it seems like Martin was the only one who was able to make it.
Sorry about that, Martin. Were you able to, did you make any progress? Okay, fair. Okay. All right. Well, then this is time for calendar updates. Lois, you're my calendar manager. She has my phone, yes. It's not worth it. I'll just go off the brain. It's fine. All right, looking at calendars between now and June 10th. That's what I thought I heard you say. June 5th. I believe it. Second week. June 12th. Good old June 12th.
Well, the idea of Saturday has worked for us in the past and hasn't worked, but it also has worked. I don't have anything on my calendar for the 24th or 31st of May this month.
The 24th of May is Labor Day weekend.
That is a good point.
Thank you so much.
Memorial.
Memorial Day, not Labor Day.
Yeah.
That one Monday off that no one knows what it's about. I do actually, but people miss the name all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who does it, I promise.
I mix up Memorial Day and Labor Day constantly.
Yeah, it's a very easy thing for people to do. Very important not to. They're not the same holiday.
So you said that was the 24th?
The weekend of the 24th is Memorial Day.
So 31st?
I can do the 31st.
I'm unavailable on the 31st, but I know the world does not revolve around me, so that's okay.
I mean, I'm okay with trying to, like, at this point, we're just trying to get this across the finish line so that we can submit it, right?
Yes.
So I'm okay with us not all being there. Bess, if you're okay with not being there, I'm still okay with doing the 31st. I'm also okay with us doing another date where I wouldn't be available, as long as some of us get together and get it done so we can send it. Yeah, May 31st.
Maybe this one's yours.
This might be the one.
This is the one.
And I don't blame you, because I also was available for our last Saturday work session, and then I had to work. So,
If you go to the dentist for me, I'll lead the work session. Okay.
okay, so last time it was 9 a.m. Are we wanting to do that still?
I'm free anytime that day. I can do whenever.
Martin, are you also?
I am, but what's the,
Please God bump it to 9 then. Or bump it to 10.
10?
I would gladly bump it to 10.
I'm good with 10.
10 a.m. on May 31st. You all committed to it, you silly billies.
Yes, locked in.
Location?
The meeting room in the basement of the library.
We have to get a appointment reservation.
I don't think so. We didn't last time.
We
did
have yet to do it. It's always been a walk-in.
Yeah.
I think I made the appointment like day of last time we did it there. No more than 2 hours.
Yeah, if this takes longer than 2 hours, what are we even doing? Okay, so that is hopefully the final work session for the municipal code language updates.
Codes 1 through 9.
For that, yes.
We did say 10 a.m.
10 a.m. All right, moving on to council member updates.
I think I've said pretty much what I can update you on at this point.
I wasn't prepared for that being it. All right. Announcements.
One, just a question, I guess. Any announcements or any information about Friday? I think that's what.
I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so it's June 7th at 11 a.m. We're signed up. We can't give things away on the route again, same as last year. So I was just gonna duplicate everything we had for Snake Saturday, get more bubbles. This whole meeting, I was thinking that we would be meeting again on the 5th, and I was like, I'll give you all the info then, but I'll probably send out an email with all the information once I get it, and then ask that you guys let me know for sure if you're coming. And then I was also thinking I could send out an invitation to North Kansas City employees if they want to come. So I'll just send that to everybody. And then I'll also send y'all a little flyer in case you want to share it with people with the details. So, biggest parade party ever.
That sounds.
50 years of
Thank you.
pride. It's the theme this year. It's gold, and it's 50 years of pride.
Yeah.
Okay, so watch your inboxes.
Will the mayor be joining? The new mayor?
I can ask him. I can
Yeah.
badger him into it. For sure. I probably can't guarantee he'll be there, but I can annoy
Committee
him enough.
members, city employees, council members, all are welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's our budget for glitter hairspray?
That's up to you.
$12? $2? That's like a can.
It's budget season right now, so I'm
How much room do we have in the
particularly
budget?
stingy. There's enough.
Oh, I know there's enough.
I want to bring something up real quick because I bugged Megan about it, and maybe I missed it since I missed the last meeting. We were told we were going to get email addresses, and I feel like I'm missing a lot of stuff because we don't have them.
We'll follow up on that.
It's a little bit late knowing that it's not the first day of May, but happy AAPI month to all. Celebrating Asian Pacific Islander month for the month of May.
I think I have a social media post that I can put out tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I know there are. I'm sure they're doing something at the Nelson. I don't have a list with me, but I got you. I'll find it.
I do have one suggestion for that. Look up Little Coffee Shop down in Columbus Park. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's so
called
good. Cafe.
And yeah, they always do a lot for this month. And the owner of Cafe was actually in the Royals Buck O'Neill seat at the game the other night.
Try their ube donuts. They're very good.
Yes, Cafe, C-A-F-E, Cafe, and then C-A space P-H-E. And that was the last thing I got to read before she died.
I wasn't paying attention to you closing your computer. I was like, what?
I guess I shouldn't personify my laptop.
No. Yeah, no. All right. Any other announcements?
Mine's more of a question. It's kind of an annual question. I don't remember the last time I asked it. But the bylaws and I think code states the EIC starts at 7 p.m. I think once a year I just throw out there, is there any desire to move that to 6 p.m.? And I say that because I know we have staff that sticks around 2 hours after work to wait for this. So me, I don't care. But I just throw it out there.
I for one would love it if it was 6. I have no conflict whatsoever.
I have no preference. I have nothing requiring me to wait till 7. I can totally do 6.
I can do 6.
I think 6 will work for us.
Do we have to make a motion to change that in terms of the bylaws?
Do we have to
Recommend?
change laws?
Sure, that would be. I mean, Honestly, it can be next time too.
Nope,
It-
we're
it
here,
won't-
we got a quorum.
It won't happen. I mean, we can't do it, I don't think, until the code changes, but we can go ahead and throw it in with a recommendation
Let's
to
do it.
council.
I move to make a recommendation to change the code that we meet at 6 PM instead of 7 PM.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Yay!
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, well, it is 8:42 on Thursday, the 8th. I call this meeting over. Martin. I know.
Oh, I jumped.